With all the parts in for the beast, it was finally time to start building the machine. But something really interesting happened when we put out our parts video. Someone reached out with a white color chassis that we had or wanted, and he wanted the black color, we wanted the white color, so we got the exchange going. My name is Bharat Nagpal, you're watching iGyaan. Let's build the beast. The first thing we did was strip the chassis completely off all the covers and panels. This is a really modular chassis and it allows you to really reach in from all sides and customize, hide the cables, do all of the fun stuff that you can. This build, however, the first attempt is going to be just to boot up the machine, get Windows installed on it. So the first thing we wanted to do was get the motherboard in place. Now the standoffs are already on the chassis, which helps us skip a step, and all we have to do is place the motherboard and screw in the motherboard screws. Now the Thermaltake chassis comes with all the screws that you would need and also does the motherboard, so you can choose either of the screws that you want. They are specifically defined as motherboard screws. A quick tip is that you put in all the screws but don't tighten them all the way until you have all the screws in place. And once you have all the screws in place, then just do the final tightening so that you have a good fit for all the screws for the motherboard. The next step is to pop in the processor. Some people like doing it before installing the motherboard. I personally prefer doing it after installing the motherboard so that it's not bouncing around while the motherboard is being moved around. Make sure you're in a clean, static-free environment. And it's pretty simple. Just open the processor tray, pop in the processor, making sure that the arrows match, and simply clip it back in. It's as simple as that. It's really difficult to screw this up, but a lot of people do screw this up because they don't look at the arrow. So make sure the arrows are matching and you can pop in the processor. Next up, one of the 10 SSDs that we have. Now these are NVMe SSDs and there is a dedicated slot for these on the motherboard. Simply remove the heat shield, insert the NVMe SSD, remove the sticker protecting the heat transfer pads, and install the heat shield back on the SSD. Simple, we're only installing one to get the boot done. Once we're done with that, we'll set up the RAID. The next thing I wanted to get out of the way was the RAM, and we had 8 slots of 16 gigabyte each, a total of 128 gigabyte RAM. This is the Corsair RAM and this is RGB. It looks pretty. And installing it was simple. We have 4 slots on either side of the processor. Simply pop the RAM in and press till you hear a clicking sound. Make sure you align the pins with the notch that's on the RAM port. The next step really was to install the power supply, and we flipped over the cabinet and installed the Corsair power supply. It was fairly simple, 4 screws in, it tightens in place. Make sure the fan is pointing downwards where the vent is, so that your airflow is accurate and all the hot air is going outside and not coming inside the chassis. The next step was to install the graphics card, and for the setup again and for the initial boot up, I just wanted to put one graphics card in so that we could get everything set up before we insert the second one. So you need to remove 2 of the back plates in front of the PCIe slot in which you will be inserting the graphics card. Since it's a 2-slot card, it pops into place and gives you a nice click sound. The next step really is to power the machine. So we started routing the cables. The first cable that goes onto the motherboard, then other cables that power up the motherboard and the CPU, along with power supply for the graphics card. Again, this was a rough cable route and we managed to route them through the cable supply areas on the chassis. But we will be doing a cleaner cable install at a later stage once everything is fully set up and ready to go. Now, since our first step was to boot the machine, we realized that we didn't have a cooling system for the processor, since the processor does not come with a fan of its own, and we didn't want to install the liquid cooling just yet. So we had to order in a different fan. So we ordered this Antec fan. I'll leave a link to this in the description below as well in case you guys are interested. Installing the fan is rather simple. You install the base that it comes with onto the 4 screw holes on the motherboard, and then we dropped a dollop of thermal paste on the processor, and then we installed the fan. It's pretty simple, not a lot of steps involved. With the fan in place, it was time to finally boot up the machine and pray that everything works. So we got the monitor back in place, we opened the keyboard and mouse, connected everything up, crossed our fingers, and we hit the power button. Boot, 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 boot. Lights are on. Is it polling? And just like that, the beast was alive. All we had to do now was install Windows, and that was a simple step. Simply insert the USB drive, reboot the machine, and it automatically goes into the Windows setup. With the setup process initiated and everything on track, we were able to connect to the internet since the motherboard already has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And we were able to do all of this with a stretched out screen because the graphics drivers were not in place. Once Windows was booted, we downloaded the drivers and the controllers, and we were able to control not only the graphics card but also the RGB lighting on literally everything we had installed on the machine, with more lights to come. Also, we downloaded Corsair's RGB utility and got the RAM going in the Knight Rider theme, and that also looks absolutely brilliant. Okay, so we put some games on download, and before doing that we ran benchmarks, and Geekbench gave us fantastic scores not only for the CPU benchmark but also for the compute test, and absolutely amazing scores on the machine. Not what I expected with just one graphics card in. We did download some games, and I did try out PUBG for PC while the other games were downloading, and just by hitting the settings panel I was able to see that literally everything was automatically set at ultra. Graphics quality ultra, anti-aliasing ultra, post-processing ultra, shadows ultra, textures ultra. And so this machine is really going to deliver an impressive gaming performance once we have everything in place and the overclock done. There was only really one minor thing left to add on to this build. So with that, the machine was running, working, giving excellent results, but it's still not all the way in. We still have a long way to go. Installing the RAID, installing the second graphics card, installing the liquid cooling, overclocking the machine, and then finally taking it for a spin with all the latest games. And most importantly, cleaning up the build and installing lights, etc. So all of that will be done in a later video. So this is going to be it for this video, guys. If you liked it, don't forget to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to leave your comments, leave your suggestions, and keep telling us why we were wrong at selecting the CPU that we did. This has been Bharat Nagpal. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
But I feel a loss of balance when I think of you and me. I don't know what I want, I don't know what I need, but I feel there's something missing, someone's missing me.